When Cora marries into the prestigious Ashbourne family, she's swept into a world of wealth, elegance, and eerie silence. But something is wrong in the manor: locked doors, vanished names, and whispers behind the walls. As she digs deeper into her husband's ancestral legacy, Cora begins to realize that not every fairy tale ends in happily ever after. And some houses are built on secrets that refuse to stay buried. Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The world smelled of roses and rain. Cora stood at the edge of the marble balcony, fingers curled around the wrought iron railing, gazing out over the sweeping Ashbourne estate. The sun was low, casting golden light over endless rows of trimmed hedges and whispering willows. A gentle breeze lifted the train of her ivory gown, tugging it like a curious child. Inside, the grand ballroom still echoed with the laughter of guests and the soft clink of crystal. Musicians played the final notes of a waltz, and the scent of champagne and perfume lingered in the air like a spell. But out here, alone, Cora finally exhaled. Lady Cora Ashbourne. She whispered it aloud, tasting the name like it was too rich for her tongue. Just months ago, she'd been a village schoolteacher with ink-stained fingers and mud on her hem. Now she was a bride to a man she barely dared dream into existence. Lord Sebastian Ashbourne, heir to a centuries-old legacy, the youngest lord in a line of power and polish. Their first meeting had been almost too perfect. A chance encounter in a bookshop, her favorite copy of Wuthering Heights tumbling from her hands, caught by long, elegant fingers. His smile had been warm, boyish, utterly disarming. Within weeks, letters flowed daily, and within months, he knelt beneath a silver beech tree with a ring that glinted like a shard of stars. She hadn't hesitated. A door creaked softly behind her. Cora turned, heart fluttering as Sebastian stepped onto the balcony. He looked as devastatingly refined as ever, black suit tailored to perfection, a silk cravat loosely tied, and that perpetual glint of amusement in his sea-glass eyes. "There you are," he said, drawing close. "I was starting to think you'd run off before the ink dried on the certificate." Cora laughed, a soft, nervous sound. "Just needed a moment. It's all a bit overwhelming." He took her hands in his thumbs brushing her knuckles. "It's yours now, all of it. The house, the gardens, the title." He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "And me. Forever." A thrill passed through her. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. From below, lanterns flickered to life along the cobblestone path, and guests began to spill out into the gardens, the revelry continuing under stars and string lights. Somewhere, someone called her name. Sebastian offered his arm. "Shall we join them, Lady Ashbourne?" She slipped her arm into his, the new name settling over her shoulders like a velvet cloak. Together, they descended the stone steps back into the heart of the celebration. And far above them, in the tallest tower of the estate, a window slammed shut, though no wind had stirred it. The Ashbourne estate was vast, not merely in size but in presence. It loomed over the surrounding woods like a stone monarch, its turrets clawing into the sky, its windows staring blankly down like shuttered eyes. Cora had seen it first on the day she said, yes, but only now, as she walked its endless corridors as its new mistress, did she begin to understand its weight. The halls were cold, despite the hearths. Portraits lined the walls, solemn Ashbournes, painted in oils dark with time. Their faces bore similar traits: angular jaws, pale eyes, and expressions carved from stone. No joy, no softness. Even the painted children looked like they were waiting for something dreadful to happen. Cora had asked about the family tree once. Sebastian's answer had been vague: old blood, tangled branches. Followed by a kiss that distracted her into forgetting she'd asked. Now, walking alone through the eastern corridor, she paused before a painting of a woman in a sapphire gown. Her face was turned slightly away from the viewer, but her hands, folded too tightly in her lap, seemed to tremble even in stillness. Cora shivered. She hadn't meant to wander here. She'd only been looking for the conservatory, a glass house Sebastian had promised she'd adore. But the corridors all looked the same: velvet runners, gilded sconces, and doors that refused to open. She tried one now, brass handle cold beneath her touch. Locked. So was the next. And the next. She glanced behind her. The corridor felt narrower than it had moments ago. The light from the wall lamps flickered, casting long, nervous shadows. Somewhere in the silence, a clock ticked, slow and deep. Then came the sound. A creak, faint but unmistakable, like a floorboard groaning under careful weight. "Hello," Cora called. No answer. She turned a corner and nearly collided with a maid. A girl perhaps her age, with dark hair braided into a crown and eyes like polished coal. She wore the Ashbourne livery, though her apron was stained with something red, berries, perhaps, Cora hoped. "Oh, I'm sorry," Cora said, trying to smile. "I'm still getting my bearings. These halls are—" "You shouldn't be in this wing," the girl interrupted, voice low. Cora blinked. "I didn't mean to intrude. I was just exploring." The maid glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "The east wing's kept shut for a reason. Best you keep to the west side, my lady." She curtsied quickly and disappeared down the corridor, footsteps light as breath. Cora stood alone, lips slightly parted. Kept shut for a reason. She turned back toward the main stairwell, her heels echoing sharply on the stone floor. As she descended into the more lively part of the house, where laughter still drifted from the drawing room and the smell of wine wafted through the air, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. She had married into elegance, yes. But something about this house felt like it had teeth. The rain arrived without warning, tapping gently at the leaded glass windows as though asking to be let in. Cora awoke in darkness, the velvet canopy of her bed swaying slightly in the breeze that curled beneath the door. The fire had gone out. Shadows had pooled in the corners of the room like spilled ink. For a long moment, she lay still, uncertain what had disturbed her. Then there it was again. A sound. Faint. Muffled. The unmistakable sound of crying. It wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was quiet, heartbreakingly so. The kind of weeping that came from someone who had long since given up on being heard. Cora slipped from the bed, wrapping herself in a robe and moving toward the door. The crying seemed to come from inside the walls themselves, or perhaps just beyond them. She followed it, barefoot on cold stone, down the dim corridor lit only by wall sconces with flickering flames. She passed familiar rooms. The linen closet, the south stairs, the portrait of the old baron with the twisted smile. And then she heard it more clearly, a choked sob, from behind a heavy tapestry at the end of the hall. Cora hesitated. The tapestry was ancient, depicting a knight in battle beneath a darkened moon. As she reached to move it aside, her fingers trembled. Behind it, hidden in shadow, was a door. Not ornate like the others, but plain, wooden, and dust-coated. There was no handle. Only a keyhole, rusted with age. She pressed her ear to it. Silence. Then, as if it had been waiting for her breath, the crying began again, soft and distant, but real. Desperate. She stepped back, heart pounding. "Who's in there?" she whispered. The corridor answered with silence. A floorboard behind her creaked. Cora turned sharply. Standing at the other end of the hall was the maid from before, Ivy, holding a silver tray with nothing on it. Her eyes met Cora's, and the tray tilted slightly in her grasp. "You shouldn't be here," Ivy said again, her voice low but urgent this time. She glanced nervously toward the door. "Go back to your chambers, my lady." Cora didn't move. "There's someone in there. Someone's crying." Ivy swallowed. "Don't ask about this wing. Don't go poking where the family doesn't invite you. There's someone behind that door. Then let them stay there." The finality in Ivy's voice struck like a slap. Cora hesitated, but Ivy's gaze was steady. Not cruel, but scared. Truly scared. Reluctantly, Cora stepped back. The tapestry swung shut behind her, as though the door beneath had never existed. Ivy turned without another word and vanished into the darkness. Back in her chambers, Cora sat by the now-dead fire, wrapping her arms around herself. She had married into mystery, into beauty, into wealth. But that night, she realized, beneath the Ashbourne elegance was something tightly wound, something buried and breathing. And whatever it was, it had started to stir. The next morning dawned gray and reluctant, dragging pale light across the estate like a veil. Rain still clung to the windows, painting the halls in streaks of silver. Cora sat at the breakfast table in the east parlor, her untouched tea growing cold as Sebastian read the paper with the casual elegance of a man untouched by unease. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, without looking up. "I heard crying in the night." He turned the page slowly. "A storm, perhaps. This old place groans and sighs when the rain comes." Cora studied him, the crisp line of his jaw, the way his fingers held the paper so precisely, the calm detachment in his tone. She said nothing. After he left for the stables, she rose and wandered through the house, each hallway more familiar now, and more silent. Ivy was nowhere to be seen. The tapestry over the hidden door remained undisturbed, but Cora didn't try to lift it again. Instead, she turned her attention to the family archives. The Ashbourne library was vast, 3 levels of books and records, spiral staircases twined with ivy-shaped ironwork, and a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations. It smelled of dust, leather, and time. Cora didn't ask permission. She began with the family records, birth and death registries, portraits catalogued in neat, ancient handwriting. She traced Sebastian's line: father, grandfather, great-grandfather. And there, in an entry dated only 10 years prior, a name appeared in faded ink. Isadora Ashbourne. Born 1990. No death recorded. No marriage. No note. Nothing else. She checked again, no obituary. No burial entry. Just a clean disappearance, as if the ink had dried mid-sentence. In a dusty ledger beneath the desk, she found a guest log for an old memorial service, dated 9 years ago. The guest list was short, mostly family. The name of the deceased had been left blank. A strange chill crawled up her arms. That afternoon, when the family gathered for tea in the drawing room, Cora waited until the conversation lulled. "Sebastian," she said lightly, "you've never told me much about your sister." There was a beat of silence. His mother, Lady Edith, who had barely acknowledged Cora since the wedding, paused mid-pour. The china clinked softly. Sebastian smiled, but his eyes no longer did. "What brought that up?" "I saw her name in the records." "Isadora." Lady Edith set the teapot down too hard. "That subject is not for tea time." Cora's cheeks flushed. "I didn't mean to intrude. It's just odd that there's no mention of what happened to her." Sebastian's voice was soft now. "Isadora was unwell. She left of her own accord." Cora frowned. "Left? Where?" His jaw tightened. "That's enough." The air in the room shifted. Lady Edith dabbed her mouth with a napkin, then stood. "If you wish to preserve peace in this house, my dear, you do well not to dig through its ashes." And just like that, the conversation ended. The rest of the tea passed in stiff silence. Later, in the garden, Cora stood before the small stone monument she'd noticed days ago. It sat alone at the edge of the umaze, half hidden by ivy. No flowers. No engraving. Just a blank face of marble. She crouched, brushed her fingers over its surface. Something in her gut told her. This was for Isadora. Not a grave. A warning. The wind howled through the estate that night, tugging at the windows and scratching at the corners of the old house like something wanting to get in, or something desperate to get out. Cora couldn't sleep. Not after the way the room had gone cold at the mention of Isadora. Not after the way Sebastian had looked at her, not with love, not even anger, but fear. A shuddered, silent fear. She slipped from bed and moved quietly through the halls, guided by memory and instinct. The east wing was still sealed tight, the tapestry hiding its secrets. But it wasn't the sealed doors that called to her tonight. It was the study. Sebastian's private study, to be exact. She had only been in it once, shortly after their arrival, a room of dark woods and heavy drapes, always faintly smelling of ash and old books. He kept it locked most days. But that night, the door had been left slightly ajar. She pushed it open. Moonlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating shelves lined with journals and ledgers, some bound in cracked leather, others in soft vellum. His desk was stacked with correspondence, much of it written in the formal, spidery script of the Ashbourne ancestors. Cora lit a candle and moved behind the desk. As she examined the wall of shelves, her fingers caught on a ridge. A slight indentation. She pressed it. Click. A panel opened with a groan of protest, revealing a small alcove. Within it lay a collection of objects wrapped in cloth, a bundle of letters, a silver key, and a leather-bound book with the Ashbourne crest burned into its cover. a black rose beneath a crown. She took the book and opened it. It was a diary. Not Sebastian's, but someone older, much older. A woman's hand, elegant and precise. The pact was sealed in blood and silence. One daughter each generation, taken, not buried, not mourned. The house will stand, the land will thrive, as long as we obey. Cora's breath caught. My sister went to the chapel in her 13th year. My mother before her. We do not speak their names. We do not speak of the hunger beneath the floor. The walls remember, and the walls punish. She turned the page, trembling. I begged to be spared. I offered my own child in time. The house agreed. I watched them take her. The stone sealed shut. And yet, the crying never stopped. Cora recoiled, clutching the book to her chest. A cold sweat beaded at her temples. She flipped ahead, entries spanning centuries. The same ritual, the same pattern. The family wealth, the power, the longevity, all paid for in blood. A pact, a curse, a sacrifice. Each generation a daughter taken. And in the last pages, a newer hand. Shaky, desperate, Isadora ran. She found the chapel. She saw what they had hidden. They took her. I should have helped her. I should have screamed. Cora closed the book, her pulse racing. Now she understood the silence. The locked doors. The way Sebastian had looked at her when she mentioned his sister. You weren't just brought here out of love, something in her whispered. You were chosen. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the moon rise over the forest and wondering just how far a family would go to protect their legacy. And whether she, Lady Cora Ashbourne, was next. Cora waited until dusk to find Ivy. The maid had become scarce in recent days, her usual duties seemingly passed on to others. But Cora had learned the rhythm of the estate by now. When the staff ate, when they cleaned, when they disappeared into their shadowy corners. She found Ivy in the servants' courtyard, hanging linens under a bruised purple sky. A flock of crows had gathered on the rooftop above, silent and watching. Ivy, Cora said quietly. The girl froze, her hands still on the damp sheet. You shouldn't be here. Cora stepped closer. I need to talk to you. Please. Ivy's eyes flicked toward the manor, then back at Cora. After a long pause, she dropped the clothespin and led her toward the old stables, now half-collapsed and overgrown with ivy and thorns. Inside, it smelled of hay and mildew, a forgotten place. Fitting. I know about the pact, Cora said, not waiting. Ivy turned sharply. How? There's a hidden library in the study. I found the journal. I read what this family has done. It's not my family, Ivy said bitterly. I just serve here. Cora searched her face. But you know the truth, don't you? About the sacrifices. Ivy hesitated, then nodded. They call it tradition. But it's more than that. It's a binding. The Ashbournes made a promise generations ago. To something beneath the chapel. Something old. Every daughter who disappears isn't lost. She's taken. Isadora, Cora whispered. Ivy flinched. They told the staff she died of fever. But I saw her try to run. She was different, like you, asking too many questions. She went into the chapel one night. After that, they said she'd gone mad and was locked away. But I never saw a body. Just blood. And chains. A sick feeling twisted in Cora's gut. She's still alive, isn't she? I think so. Ivy glanced around, then leaned in. There's a door beneath the chapel. Sealed. Only the Ashbournes have the key. But sometimes at night, I hear it too. Crying. Scratching. Cora felt her knees weaken. The puzzle pieces were forming a shape too terrible to accept. Sebastian brought me here to marry me. But he also brought me here to give me to it. Didn't he? Ivy didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Tears pricked at Cora's eyes, but she blinked them away. I need to see her. I need to know. Ivy nodded. Tomorrow night. I'll get the key. But if we do this, we do it fast. If they find us near that door. She didn't finish the sentence. Cora placed a trembling hand on Ivy's arm. We'll find her. We'll end this. Outside, the crows rose in a sudden clatter of wings, fleeing toward the woods as the night swallowed the sky. And in the distance, the chapel bell tolled once, though no one had touched the rope in years. The storm broke just after midnight. Thunder cracked over the Ashbourne estate like the sky itself was splitting open. Rain fell in slanted sheets, lashing at the chapel's stone walls, soaking the gardens in mud and gloom. Cloaked and silent, Cora and Ivy slipped from the side door of the manor, their footsteps lost in the roar of the wind. The chapel loomed at the edge of the property, a crumbling Gothic relic, its steeple crooked, its stained glass darkened by centuries of grime. No services were held there. No candles burned at its altar. The family claimed it was left for ancestral reflection. Cora now knew better. Ivy produced a tarnished key from beneath her cloak. I found it in Lady Edith's desk. She didn't explain how she'd gotten past the lock. Cora didn't ask. The old door groaned as it opened, releasing a gust of stale, icy air. The inside was worse than Cora imagined. Rows of rotted pews, a collapsed pulpit, and walls lined with stone plaques bearing names long erased by time. The floor was uneven, some slabs cracked or lifted, as though something beneath had tried to push through. At the altar, Ivy knelt and began feeling along the floor. "There," she whispered. She pried up a loose slab, revealing a hidden ring set into the floor. Together they pulled. The stone shrieked in protest, and revealed a set of narrow stairs descending into utter blackness. The candle flickered in Cora's hand. They stepped down. The air changed immediately, thicker, colder. The scent of mold and rust grew stronger with each step. The stairs spiraled into a catacomb-like passage, lined with bones and old carvings. Some of them symbols Cora couldn't decipher, others she recognized from the journal. Protection wards, containment circles, blood seals. The corridor opened into a vaulted chamber. At its center was a crude stone altar, darkened with ancient stains. Chains hung from the walls, some snapped, others still taut. In the far corner, motionless, curled like a ghost, was a girl. Thin, pale, hair matted and tangled down her back like dead vines. She wore a tattered dress, long stained and torn. Her back was to them, but Cora could hear her breathing, shallow and ragged. "Isadora," she whispered. The girl flinched. Slowly she turned. Her eyes, once likely a mirror of Sebastian's, were now sunken and rimmed in violet. But in them, beneath the fear and fatigue, was recognition. "You're not one of them," she rasped. Cora rushed to her side. "We're here to get you out. We know what they did to you." Isadora shook her head. "It's not just them. It's what's down here. It listens. It feeds. It sleeps now, but when the pact is broken." A sound echoed behind them. Footsteps. Sebastian's voice, low and smooth, cut through the dark like a blade. "I asked you not to go looking for the past, Cora." They turned. Sebastian stood at the bottom of the stairs, soaked from the storm, hair plastered to his forehead. Lady Edith stood behind him, dry despite the rain, eyes hollow as marble. "You were never meant to find this," she said. "But you've made your choice." Cora stood, shielding Isadora. "You lied to me. You married me knowing I was your next offering." Sebastian's expression flickered, something between pain and resignation. "It was the only way. The estate, the wealth, our very name, it all depends on the pact. One life for 100 years of prosperity." "But she's still alive," Ivy said, stepping forward. The sacrifice failed. Edith's voice grew sharp. "She wasn't meant to be kept. She was meant to be given." Suddenly, a low rumble trembled through the chamber. The walls groaned. The chains rattled. The house knew. The pact was unraveling. Cora reached for Ivy's hand. "We're ending it. Now." And behind her, Isadora stood, weak but burning with purpose. Together, the three women faced the altar. Behind them, the Ashbournes began to scream. The chamber groaned around them, the very stones pulsing like a heartbeat, slow, furious, waking. Cora didn't need the journal to know what was happening. The pact was breaking. She tore one of the loose chains from the wall and swung it hard against the altar. It cracked, sending a jagged vein through the blackened stone. Ivy struck it again with a rusted lantern, flames licking up the side, catching on something old and dry soaked deep into the rock, blood maybe. Generations of it. Lady Edith screamed, her voice shrill and feral. "You don't know what you're doing. If the pact is undone." "The curse is undone," Cora spat. "Let it end." Sebastian lunged toward her, fury finally cracking the mask of charm he had always worn. But Isadora moved faster. She hurled a shattered iron candle holder at him. Not hard enough to kill, but enough to knock him back onto the wet stone, breathless. "I begged you to help me," she said, voice hoarse, "and you locked me away." He didn't reply. The flames spread fast. Whatever power had lived in that altar, it recoiled now in smoke and fury. The chamber trembled, dust raining down from the ceiling. One of the support pillars split down the center with a thunderous crack. "We have to go," Ivy yelled. Cora grabbed Isadora's hand, and together the three women ran. Past the altar, past the crumbling symbols carved into the walls, up the narrow stairwell into the chapel. The air grew hotter behind them. The fire was chasing them like something alive. They burst through the chapel doors into the stormy night. Rain soaked their clothes instantly, steam hissing off their skin as cold met heat. Behind them, the chapel shuddered, not just from fire, but from something older, something breaking loose beneath the stone. The steeple collapsed, bricks tumbling in a roar of ruin. A scream echoed within, not human, not of this world. Then silence. The fire consumed the chapel entirely. Its orange glow lit the sky over the estate like a warning beacon to the heavens. Back inside the manor, the great hall mirrors cracked one by one. The eyes of the old portraits bled tears of ink. The chandeliers swayed wildly as the foundation groaned. The pact that had fed the Ashbourne bloodline for centuries had been shattered, and the house knew it. Cora, Ivy, and Isadora didn't stop running until the estate gates were behind them. They collapsed in the wet grass, mud on their hands, rain in their mouths, hearts thudding like war drums in their chests. "We're free," Cora said at last, breathless. Isadora looked toward the glow behind them, her voice shaking. "Not just us. All of them. The ones who were taken before." Ivy nodded. "We ended it." No one spoke for a long time after that. The rain slowed. Dawn approached behind the clouds, gray, tentative, but new. In the distance, the Ashbourne estate stood silhouetted against the rising light. Once a place of power and wealth, now nothing more than a house filled with echoes and ash. Cora turned to her sisters in fate. "Let's go," she said, "and never come back." And so they walked away, three women who had faced the dark and survived it, leaving behind a name that no longer held power over them. The Ashbournes were no more.